Welcome to the first ever episode of what is going to be most likely the most chalked podcast you've ever seen. That's right, we've already started with copyright infringement. It is the Champ 3 podcast, CRL. We cover just about anything under the sun in the Rocket League spectrum, but you want to make sure you're focusing in on collegiate. Ken Carbon, Kendo Slice here, alongside my guest host for the day. I have Oliver Bass above me, Seb, Danger Taco, and we have the back-end wonderkind, Zeta, as well. Gents, how's everyone doing?
Good. Very ready for the season to start. I feel like at this point I'm going a little stir crazy because we are like days away from actually starting the season. Like RLCS is back in swing, but like I want it to where like every day of the week I don't have to wake up and wonder, what entertainment do I have today? There's just gonna be CRL. Like we are 2 days away. 2 days. 2 days.
2 stinking days. Seb, I mean, you gotta be feeling pretty good about Canada right now.
Oh yeah, I imagine we'll get into it, but listen, it's a whole new leaf. I think the only returning team is Laval. Keanu, didn't make it through, but Valleyfields are back. We have our world's semifinalist, and I'm beyond excited to see how they do and eventually top that leaderboard.
Taco, any dangerous topics right off the bat you want to cover?
Well, we did touch a little bit on the fact that according to the defending national champion Cam, that the entirety of his region has gotten worse. And he just thinks that the entire region is just going right in the trash bin, flames and all. It's just a flaming dumpster pile of a region, which is crazy because we've been saying that for years. But apparently, the moment they hit the precipice, they've hit their peak, the absolute apex, they're like, hey, this is the best we're going to get, and now it's all downhill from here. And I want to know whether or not that's actually accurate.
Zeta, I got to ask right off the bat, what did you think of turning a new leaf being a Canada pun?
Great. I also love the fact that it took Bass a whole less than 10 seconds to mention RLCS in a CRL podcast. So.
We are all within one. We have players that participate in CRL.
This is very, very true. I just found it funny.
Cross-pollination.
That was the case.
Absolutely. Something we'll probably end up covering later on in the discussion. But yeah, welcome everyone again to the Champ 3 podcast. It is the first episode of an effort that hopefully we'll be doing weekly during in-season times. The goal right there. But who knows? We might actually have some off-season collegiate Rocket League to talk about. We're going to be covering all sorts of things: qualifier results, preseason predictions. I imagine there'll be a hot take or two. And who knows what we might end up covering Monday, Tuesday, one of those days every week. And we're hoping to be on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts, wherever we can find it. Also streamed, at least for the moment, right here on the Kendo Slice Twitch channel. But we have introductions through. I gotta say, we have the complete picture for CRL in the spring. Regionals went through. Were there any surprises for you all from this first and second regional? Or excuse me,
Canada has multiple teams that are actually quality at this point. I feel like I feel like we're going to keep that'll be the narrative all season long, especially considering that whenever Seb is hosting, for a fact that we are going to talk about those teams on air. But that's the crazy part. Teams. We have multiple Canadian teams. We don't just have one team to disappoint us on both coasts. It's crazy.
Okay. All right. Listen. Okay. Yes. Teams, plural. Keanu didn't make it through, but as a replacement, we have the University of Alberta, who's always been kind of on the cusp, but this time they destroyed everyone. They only dropped, I think, one game in the final during their whole qualification run. And then on the East Coast, we of course have Laval, who's returning after an interesting qualifier, and then Valleyfield, who is also back. The French Canadians continue to absolutely dunk on Ontario, so it's good to see. However, whether or not it, like you mentioned, the storyline is going to be, there's multiple Canadian teams. Then we'll see halfway through the season where they are on the table. But
you said number one. You literally came in here saying they would be top.
Yeah, I know exactly. That's the point.
Okay. My bad.
Yeah. This is me gaslighting you right now.
I see.
Of course, I led with regional teams just because one of the things that was so exciting to me is we get to see Borregos this time around. Borregos making it Mexican representation in the East, if I remember correct. Is it the East or the West? Give me 1 second.
The West.
It's the West.
Yeah.
Okay, so even better.
Thank you, Zeta.
This is why we have Zeta.
Exactly. This is why we have Zeta. Zeta's keeping us all together. But Mexican representation within CRL, Taco, what are you thinking there? Because in all honesty, Absorbent Karma took a team to the cusp and now has made it over the edge.
Yeah, I love Absorbent Karma. He actually came into my stream as Bass and I were doing our CRL coverage for the first qualifier, and he just said his hands were shaking. And it was funny because, I mean, at one point, Karma was like 2,200 threes player, like very high level. And yet he's played, his team used to pretty much run back when they did the field for Rival at the Rival Esports. Yeah. His team basically farmed all of that throughout the entirety of that existence in NA. So he has a lot of high level experience, and he was like, I was genuinely nervous. Like my hands were shaking throughout all of that because we've been playing for so long. These games are so sweaty, but they're in there. And I like how we're getting new regions. It's just like when CRL started opening up a little bit more and getting more and more acceptance. And I feel like it's somewhat analogous to how we think about RLCS, where we have these minor regions or emerging regions. And Mexico is somewhere I think that we wanted to include for so long. We finally started to open up, and we already have top contenders. I mean, there's like 1,000 teams that sign up for CRL quals every single year, and Borregos are one of the 32 that make it in. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I found a little bit surprising was you look down the line, and I realized that this has kind of always been true, but more so this season than any of the others. The names you're seeing are still all so familiar, especially like in the West. Long Beach, Missouri S&T, North Texas, Ottawa. You go down the line, UNLV, despite the fact that they were going through so much behind the scenes with the whole soft bans that came through on the Alpha Booze, that it surprises me that the parody kept everything intact rather than us seeing a whole slew of new teams.
I mean, East Coast was definitely a lot more volatile than I would say West Coast for this one. Like, we have a couple new West teams for sure, but it's like the East Coast is one of these things where it's like, I mean, again, I feel like the number one representation, Akron has 2 teams in now. The only team that had ever really been able to do that was Northwood previously, or at least within like the last like CRL year or so, versus Akron now, where it's like, I legitimately believe that Akron's new team is better than their old one. I actually think that gold is better than blue.
Yeah.
For not only because of the fact that they straight up beat them in quals. I mean, Taco and I literally got to see that, but it was also like, I don't know, man. Jonathan has been good for far too long. It is surprising it took people this long to figure out that this guy was going to be a star in CRL. Like, he is going to be something special, especially when they put him on a team with Patty. I don't know what they were thinking pulling Patty off the A roster and putting him in with another. Hey, remember how the last rookie that we had on the team did absolutely incredible and he outshined the rest of our players? Why don't we bring another rookie to do the same thing? Oh, but let's not put him with the other rookie. Let's just both take them and put them onto the B team instead. Like, I don't understand Akron's thought process there, but I'm for it. Like,
someone mentioned this, and I think it's actually a decent point, is that technically Buzz and Tristan are kind of like the old heads in terms of like what they are.
They are now.
So there might be saying the gold team, well, they are now, but like the gold team in a way is kind of like the future players within a lot of their games. Because I believe Knight, or rather Foul, he's a much newer player. You have Jonathan, who's pretty new as well. Patty just had his freshman year, or rather his first semester of his freshman year. So I think it's almost like a development project. I don't know if you really need to stress it that way. I like that idea. I think both teams are great. Obviously, they both made it in, but I agree that there were times where Patty was by far the brightest star. Tristan, I think, in the words of some other casters that we talked about, he used to be the X Factor. He used to be so good that people used to debate way before Northwoods whether he should be allowed to play in the first place in CRL. He was the original argument because he was that good.
Proto Lion Blaze.
Yeah, and now Tristan is still very good, but I think everyone's like, yeah, he's great, but like now everyone else is getting closer. At least that gap is closing, and I think Patty is one of those players. He's just a fantastic recruit. To say of Akron having 2 arguably almost rank A plus teams while having no full rides to be giving out. They're not throwing money at it. It's incredible how they're able to keep getting these players into their program. I don't know how they do it.
I think what's crazy about it too is because it's such a stark difference in terms of like program development compared to other schools that also have like A and B teams. Usually, a lot of the time, if you have a B team, you're going to have a player who's like going to develop until they're like either good enough to just be straight up on the A team. But Akron had the patience to let their A team just continue as they are because that was essentially good enough. I mean, they were able to make it some sort of distance, but continue developing the pieces on that B team until it was essentially at this point the same caliber of their A team, and now they have two top contending caliber teams that are contending for like actual potential top positions.
And I also think that, and I said this actually, I forget whether it was the commentator chat, so like our B stream chat, or if I said it in admin chat. I'm like, this Akron Gold move, taking Patty from blue and putting Patty on gold, was a future move because, as was mentioned earlier, it is the younger of the two rosters. Like, there is so much potential if they are able to gel, and Jonathan and Patty already played well together. Like, not necessarily directly in high school, but they were excited to play on the same team, so much so I believe it was part of the recruiting process there back when Jonathan transferred over from Shenandoah.
Oh my god, forgot about that.
I also forgot he was Shenandoah because I remember looking him up and knowing about him and hearing about him through the high school championships that he played in and won. And then like that University of Shenandoah appearing on the ranking list, and they kind of like just came out of nowhere, and hearing that he had transferred to Akron, it was kind of like, okay, Akron, it seems like they're starting to build a future team. And then they got Patty, and then obviously, Patty had his rookie season in the fall, and we all know how well that turned out. So, yeah,
I wonder if it's
really
the
cool.
downfall of like Akron, the gold team or blue team. Blue team's the like old heads at this point, correct? Like that's. I'm trying to remember which one's
like.
I know for a fact I believe Buzz is graduating. I'm not sure about Tristan because I believe he did take at least one semester off, and that was the semester they didn't make league play.
Yeah,
reasonably.
I'm kind of convinced at this point Akron Blue and Northwood White are the same team. Because they pretty much are. They really are. It's like, yeah, let's just put like people in the retirement home on one team. They're still good. They're still kicking. We obviously kind of have teams that are contending for better placements.
All I'm saying is that if Itsoka was here, he would be absolutely flaming you for criticizing Northwood White. He would be furious that you would even dare.
Well, it's also,
I mean, better, kid. Sorry.
Well, you do have to get better, but also, I mean, it's a lot to be said about recruitment. I think it's an art, and the fact that it just throws the reactions up. Like, I think it's important to also focus on the recruitment aspect of it because I think I think one thing that actually got me really a buzz was Reddles a while back tweeted out. He's like, hey, any college, give me a full ride and my choice of teammates, and I'm there. It's not just give me a full ride. He specifically wants to go to a place where it's fantastic. And as much as I love a team like, let's say, Kennesaw, and that Tyro and TNT are great players, and you have Flitz kind of leading the charge, and you have other pro-level players like on GMU trying to kind of carry your way through, then yeah, you have some really high-level players, but if you don't have the surrounding area or the surrounding talent, I think it's so hard to convince that high-level team to actually, or high-level players to actually commit to something. And that's why I'm still so impressed by Akron that semester after semester, they're not just getting like, yeah, here's an 1,800 player. Like, no, this is like one of the better players that you had available on the board in general. And they're stealing them away from those larger schools with maybe a better paycheck. So I think Akron gives me a lot of hope for that. And I think anyone who would love to model their esports program, they need to take notes on whatever Akron is doing.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Akron, with those 4 championships that they have, no big deal. That's got to be incredibly enticing to say, hey, look, we currently have all these great players and 4 championships. Why not come down to Akron? Get yourself a nice education and a championship on top of that. Huh?
Dude,
it's a really good pitch. Just based on that.
CRL was like them beating UNT when they were in Texas. It was like for the land. That was like when I was first like actually getting into it. I remember watching that and just literally sitting there going, Tristan might be the best player I've ever seen play Rocket League. Like he was making them.
Oh yeah, he was him, dude.
he was just decimated. Like, it wasn't even close. He was just beating them up and did not like. That was my favorite part though, was watching, because the crowd reaction, you could hear it as it got like dimmer and dimmer, and people were just kind of like starting to realize, you're like, oh, this ain't gonna be good. And you can just see Tristan's cam as he's just
just doesn't at the office. It's just what you do.
It's impressive.
One of the things I did want to talk about staying in the East was coming out of the fall split, going into the winter split. There was a lot of talk about a few different colleges, Fisher being one of them, the potential of this team breaking up. Ball State, there was a lot of duress on the interior portion. I believe Zath was at the forefront of that. And then Stockton was a gigantic question mark. All three of these teams are still in the East. They still make it through, and it leaves me wondering a little bit. And are the next echelon of teams in the East just not ready to take that extra step? Or are the individuals on these squads just that good?
Well, I think it would almost be the reverse. If you're looking at Stockton, we know what happened. There's no question mark to Stockton. There's an exclamation point as Bussy goes on air and just absolutely flames his teammates. Dude, he was just like, again, no questions about what happened to Stockton. Stockton made a risk. It didn't pay off. And now they picked up, what is it, Anthony Pizza? What's his name?
Yeah, Anthony ate Pizza.
It's the best name ever.
It is Anthony ate Pizza is the official title.
They're still here. They're still here. Like, they still qualified. I'm more surprised at Fisher still being here. We heard the rumors of whether or not that was going to stick around, but they're still here. So they're going to try for the run back and lose to a West team again. But they're going to make an attempt. Sosa, I think, he's into it. The guys seem into it. All of them seem to be doing well as far as LCS is concerned. But Stockton, I am surprised, has not nuked itself out of oblivion right now.
Staying in the East, just for one more point here, are there any teams, as you look down the list of 16, that you're like, wait a minute, what is this team doing here?
I feel like it's going to be Rochester.
I think there's a very obvious answer to that question, and we all have the same answer.
Do we?
Western Michigan University.
No, I don't even. I'm not even surprised by that. I'm not even close.
No.
So, okay, context to this. I watched them play at a LAN with Akron in Ohio in November. So I actually got to see those guys compete. Gengar is him, man. Gengar is so good. He's one of those players where it's like, again, very similar to what I would say is Jonathan, because like, I think, I don't know about where you guys found Jonathan Taco. I'd have to imagine it's very similar to like me. I don't know if it was seasonal shootout. Like that was when I first heard about him, like maybe over a year ago in like a bubble league. And Gengar, I found through like one's play. That dude is the weirdest guy I've ever seen when it comes to the way he plays the game, but it works well. He's just individually such a talented player. Like, so Western Michigan, I will say, the fact that they like qualified as easily as they did is more what surprises me versus like them just qualifying at all. Not necessarily a surprise. They're a solid team, especially Al Siege. That kid's crazy too.
Yeah, you
just another Stevens, dude.
Yeah, throw in the fact that they were number 2 in their bracket that they went through. Like, it's not an unknown who was playing for this team. I saw the names and I was immediately like, no. Okay, Western Michigan, new school, but you investigate just a little bit further. You dig under the dirt and you see what they have on that team. That's actually a team that's going to be competing not only for playoffs, they may be able to have a puncher's chance against one of those top 3 teams.
Interesting. Because I have to admit, going into the rankings, Gengar was the only recognizable player for me on that team, and that it really attributed to how and where they ended up in the bracket that they qualified in. But from some fun facts for that, I believe they are the highest in terms of high as in like going numerically, highest seed since Miami University. To qualify for CRL in Miami, I believe, is still the highest. I think they were the 87th seed when Miami qualified way back in the day.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a really fluky bracket. I don't want to get too into it, but yeah, Western Michigan was a surprise for a few of the guys on the ranking committee. But that's just how qualifiers go sometimes.
I'm kind of more surprised that Rochester ran it back. Like Rochester getting in again is kind of like, they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. Very solid team. But like, I feel like a lot of people are kind of expecting, especially after a sort of shaky end of the season, that they kind of lose the mojo.
Yeah.
They did not.
They seem to also be, staying strong. I think I was more skeptical about Stockton, if I'm honest. Again, like we mentioned earlier about like, we don't know if they were going to like, I was wondering if they were even going to like go and sign up for quals again, or, if they were going to even be able to find a third. And lo and behold, they did. They proved me wrong, and now they're back.
I think Rochester University is in the same grouping mentally for me as a Grand Canyon University, which did not make it, but they fell one game short in Western Quals for Qual 2, falling, I believe, to Utah. And Rochester and Grand Canyon, when I watch them pass and the mechanics, I'm like, oh, these guys are good. And then out of nowhere, they'll just give up the widest open goal I've ever seen. And I'm like, where's the disconnect here? I literally tweeted out. I don't tweet. I like, surprisingly, even as an analyst in CRL, I don't often make directed tweets about teams. I normally congratulate stuff. I'll tweet out highlights or a call I liked or something. But Grand Canyon was such a mystery to me because I'm watching them play against, I streamed one of their off-stream matches against Arlington, and they were kind of slapping Arlington around, like at times, but then eventually they would just give up a bunch of silly goals. So it'd be them like getting a 4-person passing play into it, or a 2-person pass play into a flip reset double tap, and then their goals given up were just like them not touching a ball or it rolling into an open net on an overcommit. And I'm like, how is this an issue? Like in Rochester was the same thing. The first thing on stream, I believe they were actually on first week, I predicted against them. They completely annihilated their opponent. And then the rest of the season, they were like giving up silly goals again. And I'm just like, you guys you have something so close. Like obviously the chemistry is there on the passes, but you need someone to maybe like, I don't know, peel back the cover and say, okay, what gears are getting caught here?
Well, you've just described as CRL. That is Rocket League.
Yes.
That's about right.
It mirrors traditional collegiate football in that there's no defense.
The best.
What about
Go ahead.
What about Ball State?
Where I like, dude, part of me doesn't even want to talk about that. I like, because it's one of these things where it's just, how are we still at this point where Ball State is contending, considering the chaos that has erupted within that university and that program? Like, I mean, Zeth is great at the game. I'll give him that. But like, it just felt like there was no chemistry. Like there was no reaction when it came to them mixing. Like there was just.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nothing. But they did it. And even though, I mean, to be fair, like, again, like Daffy's also a great player. Zeth is a great player, but they never clicked ever. But you could also argue the same thing for Laval because, they also were like bottom of the board. But Laval, like they had pieces where they could work with, and they had like a general kind of mindset of what they wanted to do, even though they didn't practice. But Ball State, they didn't at all, as far as I'm aware. I don't even know if they practiced. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about that.
They have a facility. I'm pretty sure they
do.
Like a facility, or did they practice?
Do they practice?
Oh, well.
You can't answer that one.
Do they scrim?
I can't answer that. Do they scrim?
Grant, he'll tell us in like 12
that is the eternal question of CRL teams, is the amount of times I've seen people come into chat and they're like I'll be talking to them about CRL and they're like, yeah, you guys decided, like, yeah, we worked really hard, but the semester's busy, we're not really scrimming. And then they complain about results, and I'm like, you gotta play together to actually build chemistry. Yeah, it's just like they don't put in work. And then I see all this frustration, and when I ask them, they're like, well, we scrim like maybe like, I don't know, once a week maybe. I'm like, as in like an hour, 2 hours? Like, no, like a one game. Like we do like 3-4 games and then we're done. And I'm like, and I'm just like, it's no wonder when I run into all these like Ohio State guys, those guys used to triple Q ranked all the time. Florida guys used to Q rank together all the time, duo triple Qs. And it's just like, that's what I want to see out of them. Though I will say the talent can carry you really far. I think Ball State, I mean, they didn't make it in East Qual 1, but they also had, I think, West Virginia, both Akrons in their pool. So even with 2 slots, I wouldn't be surprised if you don't make that. But in their second one, I covered them in their upper bracket game, the upper bracket final. Since that was the one where you had to make upper bracket final, then also wait for lowers to finish. And they played USF, and I'm like thinking that's going to be a close one. Ball State just destroyed them. Like that was, that was ugly. It was not a good match. Like afterwards, I was casting it with Floms, and she's afterwards just saying like that was not a good game. Like I thought that would be a bit more competitive, but I think one of the games ended nearly 10-1. I believe it was carnage at time. They definitely have the talent. It's just once they start playing the absolute elite teams, I think I know Daffy, I know Zaf. I think the tilt might come in, and that's where it makes all the difference. And that's why you need to be good friends. You need to hang outside of just the scrim room. You need to be like friendly with each other. You need to be able to be candid with each other, and most importantly, you need to be able to respect each other dealing with those losses. Because I've seen too many teams get egos carry them down, and when I'm like, on paper, you guys should be like top 4 or something like that.
I'm gonna give one stray and then we can move on. Seton Hall shouldn't be here. Okay, moving on.
Just because they beat Seton cleared qual 2 for the qual spot doesn't mean they don't belong here.
They shouldn't be here, dude. They shouldn't be here. You can't take a Pandora's box of a team that qualifies, unqualifies, is like nowhere to be seen, but then on one day just turns out to be like the best team in the East, and then be like, yeah, dude, these guys should be here. No, they're like the Joker. They're chaos. They're unfiltered, unadulterated chaos, and I don't want them here.
But okay, I feel like that all comes down to Froze. I feel like as much as I don't want to bully the player, every single time we look at this team, we go, all right, is Froze actually going to be able to play today? Or like, because there's just so many times we look at that team, it's 2 good players, like just Toad and Stokely just back and forth. It's good back and forth. And then Froze just overcommits out at midfield and they get scored on. And it's just like one of these things where if he's on, that team's qualifying every day of the week. If he's not, they're losing to a Ball State that is already tilted out. Like, it is one of those type of vibes. Like, it really is.
That was.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just one last thing to wrap this. That was my contention for the longest time. I have so many people still say in my chat or just chats in general, it's like, well, if you have a pro, you're pretty much in. And I'm like, well, I would argue it's less important to have superstars as it is to have no weak player. If you have all 3 average, solid players, you will have a better chance of making it in than having like one really insane player, one inconsistent player, and one whatever player. Because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I think that gets proven time and time again in league play. Maybe not all the time in quals, but when you do see a team like Stevens come in, hey, it's Beastabonian, like with 1,700 players, and then they finish dead last because they just can't compete. You can maybe take down some qual teams. Well, they qualified previously.
They qualified one season. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was just it was evident that this pace wasn't just enough. And I feel like there's a lot of teams that people are like, well, obviously the pro team making it. I'm like, yeah, and then they don't make playoffs. So like what do you want? You need 3 solid players at a baseline. Your floor has to be higher.
So I want to flip-flop the thought process into the West here, and I want to start with UNLV, because what they did in qualifiers, Bass, this had to have you a little bit stressed. Completely missed out on qualifier 1.
Oh, okay, that did not have me stressed, actually. That did not, because I was talking to Willis the whole time that was going on. Him and I had a conversation. I can actually pull up the DMs on that, because him and I were just kind of going back and forth while that was happening. I don't think it was him that was out of town. It was, who was it? Maybe it's on Discord. I don't know where this message is. One of them was out of town. One of them, I believe, was at like a birthday or something for like one of their relatives. So they were just straight up out of town. I messaged him immediately though and was like, "Are you guys still competing? You know, despite the fact that Tuv is gone." And he was like, "Yes, we're still competing. Wheat's going to be with us, but we can't do qual 1. We have to do qual 2. And I will say, the thing that made me nervous is when I heard that they had, I think it was like the quarter or semifinals, they lost and went to the lower bracket. And I was like, you've got to be kidding. Like, there's no way. Like, I was stressing that day. And I had another broadcast, so I was just tuning into the qualifier results and just like refreshing constantly, like, did they make it? 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 And I'm glad they did, but I
was refreshing to see if they didn't make it.
Yeah, no, I'm aware that. Yeah.
Like, certified UNLV hater, Sibdot.
So to be fair, everybody about to be hating on the West this time. My God, what happened? Like,
wait, the West hates the West, dude.
Dude, I'm aware. I live here. Like,
you throw in on top of that though the Alpha Boost drama, and you might be able to give me a little insight here. Did Willis play or not in the second qualifier?
He did, yeah.
He did?
No,
okay,
they were good.
So it came down just in time, because I remember day before wasn't happening.
So I think it was that a lot of them just kind of risked it. They were like, if we don't play even with these players, you know, there's still a chance, like, we're not going to qual anyway. So it's like either we play and then they tell us afterwards, oh, hey, you don't qualify, we're giving it to second place, or they don't. And I think that was a lot of it, because actually what was crazy is, again, because I kind of came up in the bubble scene of like Rocket League and then also working other regions, I have a lot of connections to those guys who were getting banned. Like, there was a lot of dudes in APAC who messaged me immediately and were like, hey, do you know what's going on with this? And I was like, no. Like, I have no idea. Like, this is not my forte. I have no idea about this. But it's like, I think for a lot of the dudes, when it came to just like CRL, they were just kind of like, listen, we either compete and we try, and they tell us no, you've been banned, or we make it. Like, it's just that you don't, backs against the wall. What are you gonna do? You're just gonna give up? Like, that was not the mentality for UNLV. They were like, they knew wheat was coming in. They knew they had a chance. They were just gonna push through. And honestly, I respect him for it, because I do think that Willis is such an underrated talent in both collegiate and like RLCS levels right now. Nobody's paying attention to that dude, and they really need to be.
UNLV did make it. They went through the lower bracket after semifinals. And
semis, okay.
Yeah, they went through San Diego State, Nebraska, Arizona State, and Fullerton. The Spoods villain arc. that seems like it'll never end. But they were challenged. They do make it, and despite, I imagine, a lot of stress on their end, it was a little bit of a surprise to me. And less now that I know Wellis was actually a part of that, because I didn't end up seeing any UNLV on stream. So that went a long way into building my concerns there.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I don't think he started playing the first few matches, but he did eventually get into the games. I remember talking to Garen during a match for a mod request or something.
Did he literally get cleared in the middle?
At one point, I believe no, they were cleared the day before.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think he played like in the first or second series that UNLV ended up playing. Not sure why, but I know Wellis did end up coming in and subbing in and helping them get that spot. But yeah, I think it was Creature, I think his name is.
Yeah, Creature
was playing with Wheat and Garen at some point. So. But yeah, Wellis did end up playing. They do end up making it. So
I think
all's well that ends well.
The bigger surprise for me, though, is I looked through all the names, and 80% of the West has remained unchanged. Borderline yet again. Like, going through the names, of course, Boise State, they get the automatic qualification. Cal Poly, Columbia, Long Beach, we're used to. Missouri S&T, somehow. There were certain times where Missouri S&T weren't looking good. North Texas, also kind of somehow. Pajama Llama coming in as a third. That'll be a fun name throughout the regular season. Ottawa, there are times that they've looked like they are losing it on the internal side, but they're still here. We do have San Diego State, Dog, Lamp, and Pleb now. Looks like Eeyore on the back end doing the substitution side. So super sub, Eeyore. Texas Tech, nice to see them back. It's been a while for C Money and Con since we've seen them. But Oregon, imminent.
Yeah.
Imminent will never go away. UT Dallas, once again, and Arlington as well.
Utah Red.
Like, yeah, Utah Red. You go down the line, the West hasn't changed outside of, well, Alberta and Borregos.
Well, except for players. We're missing, like, everybody. Like, literally everybody at this point. Like, it's kind of crazy. You can win a championship and then immediately kick your best player. Like, that's wild to me, man. That really is.
Are you talking about JD?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't.
Yep. Just need the best player possible, and that's just how it goes. Yep, just best player.
I don't know. I'm confused by that.
I do want to point out that I believe this is for most of UTA. This is their last run around, if I remember correctly, right? So this is like the proper last call for a team who has historically been near the top for like a good period of time. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on them. And of course, UNT, like ever present as always, like here. So, but like you mentioned, like the West just hasn't changed a lot except for Alberta and Borregos. And Alberta, I'm just happy we have a Western Canadian team.
Yeah.
The Western Canada, for the most part, sucks out of like two teams. So, yeah.
Are you excited about the player Ketchup? How do you feel about
it? Oh, yeah, dude. Oh, yeah. Dude, Canada loves ketchup. I used to live next to a ketchup factory, bro. It was a Heinz factory. It was awesome.
Is this something is this an actual thing? Do Canadians really just like ketchup? Is that an actual...
Is this a stereotype?
That I'm unaware of?
I mean, we have ketchup chips, so that should tell you all you need to know.
I forgot about that.
Wait. By chips, do you mean what I would call fries?
No, by chips I mean like your Lay's potato chip.
Yeah,
you
no,
have
like
a ketchup flavored version of it.
Have you not seen these?
It's great. It's so good. It's so good.
I will.
If you've ever had popcorn like flavors and you've had ketchup flavor, think of that but on a potato chip.
I've never had a ketchup flavored popcorn either. What is that? This is a whole.
What?
This is a whole.
Wait, do you guys not have flavored popcorn in the
No,
US?
we do. Not ketchup.
Not ketchup flavor. Yeah.
No. Oh, interesting. That's the first time I had it was actually in a local movie theater.
My parents protected me from the evils of this world early on.
when I was in grade school, one of my good buddies, he had a Heinz ketchup shirt that said, "I put ketchup on my ketchup."
That's stan culture. I hate that. That's just pure ketchup stan culture.
In elementary school though, like imagine going up to a kid and being like, "I hate your shirt." Stan culture, dude, like a 12-year-old bashing them for their ketchup shirt.
More or less, that's what I would do.
In conclusion, I'm looking forward to seeing ketchup play as well as Alberta. I think they're gonna surprise a lot of people.
Best team in the West Coast has got, in my opinion, after the fall of both UNLV as well as Columbia, people got to start paying attention to Cal Poly. I really think they're going to surprise a lot of people this season, man.
No,
really?
We said this a million times throughout the actual last. No, they didn't. They didn't surprise me at all.
They went 10-5.
Yeah,
what do you mean they didn't surprise you? You're saying you expected them to win 10 of those 15 matches?
I expected them, if they're going to be as hyped as people were hyping them, that they do just a little bit better.
No one hyped them until the end of the season because they started off.
What do you? The players were hyping them. Oh, sorry, no, the players were hyping.
Would you like to hear their previous before like the fall? Their like 3 previous league play records.
Like they weren't great, if I remember correctly, but I mean, listen, you got tied with Ottawa, who was also having, for their standard, what we expected, a relatively dumpster season. So to be fair, UTA also choked. Should know.
Cal Poly in spring 2022 went 5-10, and they did not make fall 2021. They did not make spring 2021. Let's see, did they make, I believe they didn't, no, they didn't make fall 2020. So you have to go all the way back to spring 2020, which they had 2 teams, an A and a B team. Their B team went 7-4, and their A team went 1-10. And I believe the B team had, who I believe is one their current captain, Munku, as a rookie. So him being the last of the old Cal Poly guard, you really haven't seen Cal Poly do this well since the early beginning years of CRL. They were like one of the top lists.
Doesn't mean it was great. One zen's good.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying I wouldn't have expected you to think or like believe that they were like, should be finishing 10-5 with that kind of history.
Especially with the way that
it was a surprise to me. Yeah.
Like, you got to recognize, so like they go, Seb, in in October, I'm looking at their overall record. I believe they take 3 losses and 2 wins. That's it. So they go 2-3 to start the season. In November after that, they took 2 losses total. That was it. Like they went from a team that was 2-3 to 10-5. They had hopped.
They had a 5-game win day. They went 5-0 on, I believe, their last match days.
The entire reporting section of the Discord was losing it.
Crazy.
I think they're going to be exposed this season because I think
the ghost of Columbia?
Yes, probably. You literally just need to put like Cam and Cryptic on the field and they probably beat Cal Poly. No, you probably get them because if you look at the record, there's a ton of best of 5s that like could have gone either way, especially like even from the SDSU series, the UTA series. Remember, UTA very much choked that second half of the season, and a lot of teams ended up choking the second half of the season, including MSNT. I'm not convinced that they'll probably make playoffs. I just don't think that they're probably going to be like a top contender in the West, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, dude, come on. We already know kind of who's going to be the top contenders in the West based off like
just the rosters alone. This roster just doesn't shock me when we have newer teams coming in as well. So it's like
we also we haven't seen them get to have the MSNT treatment, because MSNT had my favorite run of all the playoff teams. I mean, obviously, yes, Columbia wins everything, but in the West, Missouri S&T goes from the 8th seed and they beat UNLV, then they beat Missouri S&T, and then they go all the way to the final. The last seed is all the way there, and they played spectacular all throughout. Ottawa versus Missouri S&T was arguably the best CRL series I've seen in like a fat minute, maybe multiple seasons. It was so entertaining, and it came down to just some mistakes from Ottawa, but ultimately Missouri S&T is an insane team, and Cal Poly had a potential to maybe face off against them, but I remember they came into playoffs and someone just DMs me, goes, "Hey, Cal Poly's playing with 2 subs today."
Yeah,
I'm like,
that was
incredibly. And I think they ended up having some dude have to like change their flight or play remotely from outside their setup or something to then only play with 1 sub. Like Crush, there's a joke in the Cal Poly sense that like he's the sub and he does not play until playoffs. Like almost every time that he's gotten to play at a high level, it's been because they need him for a sub, and it's almost always during playoffs. Yeah. So Cal Poly, yeah, maybe it's like league play wasn't hyper impressive. They're not like 15-1 or something, or 14-1, but you get to playoffs, and honestly, they still did pretty decent against Ottawa. I remember those games were not super big blowouts. It was a 4-1, but that's a pretty misleading scoreline.
One of them they won.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we're starting to spin our wheels a little bit. Just due in part 100%. To the fact we're talking about all of these teams and their potential for the future. Why don't we just get into that? The format, of course, hasn't changed. Top 8 from each conference, East and West, end up making the playoffs, and then the top 3 in the playoffs end up going to the national championship. So there'll be 3 representations from the West, 3 representations from the East. Why don't we talk about who we think are going to be in or not, and maybe have a little bit of a debate as we go? Do we want to start with East or West first? We'll vote on it.
Let's start West, because I think it's going to be the easiest for us to figure out.
Okay. I was going to say the exact opposite.
I think we can all agree who the 3 are.
I think we're going to be a lock for like 6 out of 8 East teams.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if I agree that this is going to be a surefire for the top 3, because I think that there's 2 teams I think that are going to sneak into this that are not going to be expected, in my opinion.
For top 3, I'm pretty convinced. Okay, let's just go like.
I want to.
Okay.
Well, no, I want to hear yours first, because you're locked tight on.
Mine.
I feel like there's some
mine is.
For the rest of us.
No, mine is Columbia, Boise State, and UNLV. I do not see any change in that as far as top 3 performances. Especially out of the Western teams, and especially of how diminished the rosters are. There's only 2 potential that I see sneaking maybe their way in if they have a really good season. That's MSNT, maybe a Cal Poly or a UTA, and of course Alberta's winning the whole thing. But it's like that's it.
In my opinion, I agree with the 3 that you have said. One of them is going to get upset by Borregos. I am almost confident on that. I think Borregos have been severely underestimated coming into this thing, and realistically, if Absorbent Karma is feeling it on the day, I don't know who's stopping. Like, Absorbent Karma was basically a pro for a little while. Like, straight up was a professional player. Like, if he's on, I don't know if even Durtho and the carrying skills that he has on Boise is going to be able to stop that dude. I really don't. Like, ping might be the biggest issue for him, realistically.
Borregos versus ping every single episode of the West. I could definitely see that happening.
As if playing on Western servers wasn't punishment enough.
All right, Taco, your top 3.
Ooh.
I think Columbia makes it so long as Cosmic hopefully doesn't have a season like he did last season, because they were dropping not a lot of games, but they were slipping on some of those games. So I think Columbia would be like a safer pick on that. I genuinely think Ottawa is probably a team that can knock farther than everyone else, so long as they actually practice. And man, this top 3 is it. I mean, it is pretty competitive. I also love UNLV, but Tuv was an insane addition. When they replaced Wheat's my boy, my friend forever. And I was thinking, man, that's a bummer. How good can Tuv be? And then I saw him play, and I'm like, I get it. So honestly, I feel like UNLV takes a step down, and I don't know if I trust MSNT, despite them getting to playoffs so frequently. I don't know if I trust them to peak as hard as they did last season. I feel like bumping at a certain point, I think had like multiple series where he was like 80% plus goal participation. Like he was on one that entire day. So I will in fact go with Columbia, Ottawa, and I think UTA pulls it together. I think there's something about the fact that you have no more lives. There's no, we'll do it next semester. Like you have to get it done. And I think that's also, well, I'll save that for the East because there's a tangent I want to go on with that.
Okay. No Boise State.
I think Boise State really got exposed in playoffs, in my opinion.
I think Boise State's a flash in the pan.
I think Gill is a fantastic third, and Instinct and Dirtho have insane chemistry, but then they went against Ottawa, and it's like they just had no answers for a while for a lot of, I felt like, what was being offered up. And that's my bigger concern whenever I look at some of these, Boise State, they played against UT Arlington. I liked what I saw in the playoffs, and then a little bit later on against Columbia, it really fizzled out. And it wasn't just because Columbia is that good. I felt like they just, once they play against a team that can match speed or stop mechanical plays before they happen, it's like I don't see anything else offered up. It's like our plan A works so well that why would we prep the plan B,
You say that, but also Boise State did beat Ottawa in the regular season.
Yeah, that's why I changed that, because I was like, I'm thinking back against a different series.
To Keanu. How do you feel?
Wait, Keanu lost to Boise? Lost to Keanu?
Yeah. No, Ottawa lost to Keanu.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be honest. I don't rate. I understand why you guys rate Ottawa, but I do not rate Ottawa. I think Ottawa is good, but I do not think they are to the caliber at which Kendo, Zeta, and Taco are speaking about.
I'll be honest. That Ottawa, more than anything else, I feel like goes the way of Nitrovity's mental at any given time.
Yeah, that's fair.
If Nitrovity is on, Nitrovity is a top 5 CRL player. If Nitrovity is off, Ottawa struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it ruins the whole vibe. And that's no disrespect whatsoever to everybody on Ottawa. Like, they've been able to consistently put it together and make CRL. Making CRL, regardless of what conference you're in, means you're the cream of the crop. They have put in a consistent effort that sans, some of these other teams that we could talk about Western Legacy for, despite the fact that consistency is one of the things they struggle with the most.
Zeta, this is now up to you. Who are you putting your top?
I'm gonna go a little off the board here. I'm gonna say Columbia, Boise, Arlington.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
The main reason I'm leaving UNLV off is just because, going 15-0 and then doing what happened in the playoffs kind of scares me, and even more so that Tuv is absent now. I would say there's still like 4 or 5, but I'm more confident in, UTA finishing near the top, at least in league play. Yeah. Same with Boise. I think they're both very league play successful teams.
Bass is quiet, but he's like actually malding right now.
No, I agree. I agree. Like, I have no disagreements here. No, listen, Wellis is my homie. Garen's the homie. Both of these dudes, I love them to death. I don't know what they're going to do without Tuv. Tuv was the glue on that team. Like, legitimately, like, you'd have series where Garen looked like the best player in CRL. You'd have series where Wellis looked like the best player in CRL. But the thing that was crazy about Tuv is he was consistent. Every single series he was in, he was putting a solid impact on. And I don't think Wheat's a bad player by any stretch of the imagination, but I just don't know how they're going to be able to, after building up this Tuv arc for so long, just redo their chemistry within a 2-month break. Like, I don't know how they're going to be able to do that. The one thing I will say, Wellis has told me he has now moved, and for the first time in 3 years, he is not playing off a hotspot. Like, he is finally playing with consistent internet. And that's crazy, man. That, like, as much as we joke, it's going to be Borregos versus Ping, it's been Wellis versus Ping for like over a year. Like, it really has.
So
I can't wait for the Mexico Alberta game.
Mexico versus Alberta.
Wellis okay. That's awesome. Okay, that might actually change my personal prediction. Like, me personally, I think, I do believe Boise are going to solidify themselves as a top 3. I'm actually very confident that they are going to be in the top 3 in league play. I'm on the fence on whether or not they'll be in the top 3 through the playoffs and make national championship. Because UNLV, UTA and Boise are the teams that I'm kind of wondering about. I have no doubt that Cam can single-handedly get Columbia into the top 3.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody with a pipe enough to dream up a scenario where Cam doesn't get Columbia into the top 3. So those would be my top 4. I was thinking UT Arlington's going to be the team to beat UNLV, but Wellis not on a hot spot has me thinking. Because that's I understand the difference. I've played on a hot spot before. I mean, we all know about some of my internet woes back in the day. But it's, oh boy, Wellis not on a hot spot is a scary thought process. So maybe the West stands pat, and it's UNLV who is rounding up that top 3 for me. Let's go East.
Before we go. Nobody else is taking Borregos. Nobody else highlight.
Really?
We got no fade here?
I think
the highest I think I go on Borregos is like 7-6.
These are my rankings until I can get them to report a game and watch back the replays. That's what I do every season because I know how good Absorbent Karma is, but I have played Centineo in ranked, but I've never actually seen them all together. And if I'm seeing them just outpace people, I'm going to be like, that's not going to happen when you're in league play as much. But if I'm seeing them just mechanically break people down and it's just like a slow, steady drumbeat, like they're just constantly on another level, then I'll be able to root them higher. But like for right now, that my initial vibes with them being as an unknown, I know how good Carmo is, I know how good Centineo is, but I don't know as a team how they stack up to everyone else.
Their biggest issue in the CCA Open was consistency.
Yeah.
They did win one of the 4 opens, but they fluctuated between 1st and like 16th across all 4. So yeah, my biggest issue for them is like, can they lock it in for 15 games?
I have them as a peak at 5. That's the highest I think I could put them. I don't know that they are going to be able to consistently beat Boise, consistently beat UNLV, Columbia.
That's good.
I don't think that they're going to consistently beat those teams. I think realistically, I see them taking a very similar slot to what Cal Poly has, going 10-5, somewhere around that type of record. I see them in playoffs. That's where push comes to shove, because Karma's one of those dudes where it's just like, I've seen him in big events like this before, and when pressure is on, dude's a little bit of a different beast. If they've now had, CCA Opens have been going on for however long, and they also made it into the summer series as well. Give them 6 months of training. Maybe this is now where they're finally at the point where it's like, I can see the cohesion. I don't know. I have nothing to really back this besides I just have a feeling based on results that I've seen from Karma and how good that dude is, that this is one of those things where I think they're going to really elevate and surprise a lot of people in the West.
Yeah, I have a feeling they're going to get beat by Alberta. All right, let's go to East. Okay. East.
Ketchup, my goat.
Top 3. Yeah, honestly, dude.
I like mustard better.
It's mustard. Okay, Northwood. Ooh.
Which one?
You're right. This is hard. This is actually difficult. I don't think that Northwood White is going to have as great of a season this time around. I think they kind of did get exposed in playoffs, and I think that more teams now are kind of equipped to deal with it. I think Northwood, I think Fisher, I think is still a shoe in it because they're league play monsters. The big one is the third one. I don't think IRC is going to do it. I know Bass probably thinks IRC is going to do it, but I don't. I think Akron Gold actually have a pretty good chance. I'm actually going with that because WVU hasn't impressed me too much. Kennesaw has been not, and outside of like IRC and WVU and maybe Northwood White, save for Seton Hall Pandora's box, I don't see anything happening.
I guess this goes to who's next.
Go ahead.
I mean,
you volunteered.
I don't necessarily disagree with Seb, if I'm going to be honest here. I definitely have Akron Gold's a shoo-in for me, if I'm being honest. I actually have more confidence in them than I probably do in Fisher. I still think Fisher might end up making it to to Worlds and win the whole thing. I just think it's going to be part of LAN environment-wise. That team's got more experience and more pressure, or more calm under pressure than a lot of the other teams that we've seen out of lane environment. Again, as much as I don't want to, beat a dead horse here, Colombia, one day you guys will get a win on a LAN. I believe in you. One day.
Oh, no.
But actually, I think that Fisher for me, I think at the end of the year is going to come out on top. As for this semester, I think Northwood's a shoo-in. I don't think Lion Blaze is going to take a loss in the finals very lightly. He's going to come back furious. I think just absolutely aggravated.
Yeah, after that tweet.
So I see
Cam poking the bear.
Yeah, Cam, my God, brother, if you watch this, Cam, sometimes you just gotta let it be, man. You do not want to. That is not a player you want to mess with.
No, dude, let him run, dude. You could be the second best player in. Well, I mean, at this point, if we're just talking about CRL, I mean, he does have the case for being the best currently playing. I'm just saying. He has a case.
Cam only actually got good in playoffs when he picked up arguably the best bubble player pickup of the entire year in JD. I don't know if we're necessarily saying he's that good. And he is good, don't get me wrong. Best player in CRL. Let's hold on a second. Regardless, top 3 for me goes Akron Gold, Northwood Blue. And honestly, I'm still putting IRSC in there. They got 3rd. I don't know how. How do you argue the results when literally the entire year I've been telling you guys how good this team is? They get into league play. They prove how good they are. They get into playoff. They prove how good they are. They get into the championships. They prove how good they are. When do they put up enough results that people look at them and go, oh, this makes sense? It can't be a fluke 3 times in a row. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, again.
I think the hottest topic for the East is who is going to be in the top 8, who makes playoffs, because that 7th through 12th is going to be the most disgusting battle for position towards the end of the season. There are teams, so many of these teams, it's you go, oh, is this a top 8 team or not? You're going to say more are top 8 teams than are not.
Yeah. Taco, what was your top 3?
For East, I've actually been just staring at more or less the Wikipedia page just because it's in a nice grid and so easy to look at. And the one thing I leaned towards Indian River State for one of them, mainly because I leaned, Bass, because I was looking at their bracket and they beat down.
It's Team Fish Taco. What are you doing?
They got slapped around by Fisher, and I'm like, in Eastern, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, but they still got far enough. And then they beat Northwood Blue, but I'm like, okay, well. They got a 4-1 over them. That's cool. But then Northwood Blue just comes right back, and then lower finals, they 4-1 them. And it's that's a little concerning to me. And I've talked to Slayer. I know how good that team is. I like how they play. They still don't win every game in a way that I think they should. But I think if I had to select it based on pure vibes and how much I like the play style and improvements, I honestly would be fine with saying a Northwood Blue, a Fisher Falcons, and a Valleyfield.
What?
I would say Valleyfield is actually plays that good. I'm not even trying to beat. I think Akron Gold and Valleyfield were neck and neck for my 3rd pick. I think Stockton still has too much inner turmoil, and I think Gold is also good, but I don't think Foul is as good as. I would say Jonathan and Patty are insane. I think Tokyo is incredibly improved. I think Vegas are pretty improved. And if you cancel that out, I was like, would I put Fire D or Foul on my team? And I'd probably put Fire D.
Bro, Vegas is gonna kiss you.
Bro, to Valleyfield was literally my pick. They were by far, in my opinion, the only team that got even close to Northwood during the World Championship.
Okay,
and
that's
they
definitely
don't have
true.
the player that got them there, though. They don't have him anymore.
Yeah, there's the.
You mean MVP
argument.
Vegas, the best player across the entirety? Yeah, they lose Broken, and he goes to Super Team Laval so that Laval can get curb stomped by Valleyfield in their qual game, and then have to go to qual 2.
Okay,
Valleyfield made that was
damn.
It was, bro, if you drop a 3-0 game and have 4 unanswered in a minute and then end up losing that series without going to the distance, I mean, I don't know. I feel like
that's huge. That's sick.
I feel like Valleyfield, when I watched them play against Penn State, the only reason they didn't make is that Penn State legitimately hit 3 montage worthy clips in that grand final to be able to keep them in games. Bran and Kareem and Coconut, I think, all had flip reset or a flip reset into a double or something crazy like that. I was losing it because outside of that, they were facing a majority of the shots, and then they lost out. I'm like, okay, that happens. That's how quals be. And they come back here with the same roster, and they just look like demons, and I'm a huge fan of it. And I just have faith that even if you lose Broken, I think they have, again, I think it's good enough that they've lost Broken, but I think Tokyo is no longer a third. He's like a legitimate striking partner with Vegas, and I love
Tokyo has been surprisingly good.
I love it.
For a while. And if you pay attention to the Canadian scene, like he also teams with great players. I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong, but I think Tokyo and Tekaz like played on the same team for a pickup. Might be wrong there. Like he's no slouch. The main problem he has is like pressure. He finds himself like under pressure a lot, and he's hit or miss on those scenarios. But listen, like, yeah, dude, huge. I want to believe in that. I just don't know until like I see it, because Valleyfield, they had a really, really great performance in qual, but there's also a lot of really hard hitters here, and even with Laval and Valleyfield performing at their best, like it might still just be like an 8th place, a 7th place.
Oh no, that's what's crazy is that like, and we see this I think every semester. I mean, I've been on since the spring 21, I think, or something. I've been here for a while, but like you see like a huge cluster, top 4, top 5 is like runaway, and then the middle of the pack is kind of competitive. Now it's pretty much spots 3 through pretty much like all the way through like 12, 13 are like basically the exact same record. Like there's so much game trading. So I think we're starting to move away from the teams that are just going to clear through and get 14, 13 wins and go through. I think it's very much going to be like game differential deciding pretty much that playoff 100%. Line most of the time.
That's actually one thing I will 100% agree with you on. I don't think there is going to be, this is going to be the first season, I don't think there is a far and away Northwood 15-1 effort. You know what I mean? Yeah. There isn't going to be a team at the top that far ahead and away from everybody else. I think it's going to be much closer confines. Most all the teams at the top are going to have 2, 3, maybe even 4 losses because of the interchangeability. I think Valleyfield does have that kind of top end. But a year ago, when they first made it, I was drinking the syrup. I was one of the few people putting them in the top 10, and they laid a freaking egg. The consistency, that was with a better quote-unquote roster.
The first time they played.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, the first time they qualified, they absolutely, crapped the bed. And then it wasn't until the second time.
Name-wise on paper, they were one of the best new things within the East, and I was all for it. They're going to have to show me that they are a top 3 team in order for me to put them in the top 3. So, no disrespect. I think they have the potential. So I can agree with that. But I disagree with it until they actually show me enough consistency to do it. It's not happening. Give me Northwood Blue, Lion Blaze Revenge Arc. Give me Fisher. I think they'll actually pull it off this time around. Actually, Fisher might be my number 1 seed. And as much as I want to put Akron Gold in there, because I believe Jonathan and Patty are the future of the East, I think they're going to end up falling to an Indian River.
Yes.
So that would be my top 3.
Real quick,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Seb.
No, Gaugen's like CRL is cool and all, but Berlin Phoenix 23 champions.
Okay.
We're not even going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're just going to
consequential.
That's fair. There's no Oakland.
Phoenix with the former champion Quint, who's doing so much in Canada right now.
Yes.
And I love Quint.
Hey,
All right. Just to clarify, these are the 3 we're expecting to go to the championship, correct? Not just finish in league play.
Yes, championship.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure about that, because I think I have a little bit of a hot pick here, but
let's hear it.
I have to agree with the majority. I think Northwood Blue I think is a lock. I'm gonna go with Fisher just because I think that they just kind of like dropped the ball in terms of like their like how they were going up against their opponent. They were too casual, I think.
Yeah.
And they weren't really in like, the live or die mindset, and they know that now. But I'm going to go Penn State as my 3rd.
I can respect that.
I've been a believer of Penn State since they did amazingly, and like watching them so much in last year's Open, and then they nearly cleared the entire LCQ bracket to get in the Worlds. And they did quite all right in Worlds, I would say. But they look to return, especially Coconut, as I've never seen him play as good as he's currently playing. I think they have what it takes. And who was it who was just a monster in terms of pure stats last year? I think it was Braun. He had 60 something goals on his own, or he was goal per game. Yeah, 65, I think, is top 2 or number 1 in the East. Was averaging 473 points a game. That guy has become a number 1 player on that team. And if everyone else has improved over the break, watch out. Do not sleep on them.
I don't think that's as insane of a pick as you think, if I'm being honest. Taco and I were saying the same thing during quals. We saw them and we're both like, what happened to Penn State? Dude, Jamaican Coconut looks like he actually might be the best player on that team now. And that's
100%.
Yeah.
Well, he wanted it. I mean, he wanted it because
you can tell
previously,
he wants it. Yeah.
I remember we had both spoken to him after the Penn State was kind of like, hey, we're gonna bench you for some of this, and they're like, oh, and then after they qualified for Worlds or qualified Worlds through LCQ, they put him in for a game, and they were like, hey, take this series, and he missed a lot of shots that he probably should have scored. And part of me was like, ooh, maybe that's why. I mean, yeah, you weren't playing for 4 hours so through this bracket or whatever, but so it's like, hey, that kind of makes sense. But I was like, yeah, I think he has to prove himself, and that was the vibe I got from him talking to him, is like, I want this bad. I want to show that I deserve this. I mean, he's obviously insanely high ranked SSL. He's grinding probably harder than most players, considering he's a full-time creator, pretty much as well.
Yeah.
So he's also a student, right?
Yeah, there's and a student.
Lifter.
So all students, Seb. This is collegiate.
Still, there's a lot going on, and I gotta say though, Penn State definitely cleaning stuff up because when I looked at their qual bracket earlier, I remember when they were going through it in qual 2. I was like, all right, Penn State 2-0 first round. That makes sense. 2-1 to Northeastern Black. All right, that's kind of weird. Oh, 2-1 to Florida International University. That's also pretty unusual. And then 3-0s to finish out the days, just sweeping their way through upper semis, upper final, and grand final. They just, after they got warmed up a little bit, they're just like, yeah, no one's actually touching us in the end. And I think that's the thing that speaks to me more, is if a roster starts off and drops a game or two, that's to be expected. But if you're warming up, if you're coming into peak and you're beating down pretty much the number 2 and number 3 teams in your bracket for quals, that's one thing. But especially because I do think that team doesn't necessarily hinge on Coconut, but it's very much like that team at their peak are all mechanical monsters who can clip all over the other team.
Definitely.
But if they start whiffing, if they start going overzealous in the midfield, which is their problem previously, then they start dropping games, and you need to be able to reel that back.
I mean, to be fair, that's in line with Penn State last season last semester as well. Penn State finished 8-7, but they also went 28-30. They literally had a -2 differential because of how tumultuous that team was every time that they got on the field. Like they never took an easy route to get through. If they can figure that out, how to not make it that they always go over gravel roads, I think they've got a shot. I absolutely agree with Zeta on this one, but I also do think man, that's a bold call considering who we have in the East. In order to do that, they have to beat Fisher. They have to beat IRSC. They have to beat, both of the Akrons. Again,
Northwood White. Nobody, I think, said Northwood White, which is also kind of crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that they got to beat. A lot.
Yeah.
So I do want to do one last thing before we head out, and that is give everybody an opportunity to have a hot take. And one of my favorite things in the world is giving the world the spice that it needs. We'll go down the line, start with Bass, we'll end with Zeta. What is your hot take for the CRL spring season?
I already said it, and I'm going to stick by it again. I think everyone is underestimating Borregos in the West Coast. I legitimately do believe that this is going to be a team that, again, I understand why everyone here is saying somewhere between, 4th or 5th down to 8th is we can pretty much all agree they'll probably be making playoffs. It'd be very surprising if that team does not make playoffs. Again, I just think that when they get to playoffs, they are going to be monsters. I really do think that Absorbing Karma has had enough time to transition from RLCS pro to CRL player, and he's going to come into this with his due respect. Because again, that was what we were seeing from Taco and I when he came in to chat. He was like, I did not expect it to be this sweaty and this intense. Now that he's gotten a wake up call of oh, you want to win, you got to be the best of the best. I don't think he's going to drop the ball ever, and I really do think Borregos is going to surprise everyone on the West Coast.
I find that very agreeable. Well, it wasn't the spiciest, but
it's you can't really say anything like too spicy unless it's super outrageous, just because like the level of competition is really flattened.
Very close.
I will add this to the Borregos narrative. Borregos, excuse me. Let me get it right.
None of us do it as well as Mitch. None of us.
Exactly. None of us will be able to get that good. There's a reason Mizzou are not in the Western picture, and that is because Borregos destroyed them.
That's a good team too.
Yeah, that is a decent. Well, I don't want to say they're as good as they used to be, because peak Mizzou was 2 years ago, but they have continued to have longevity, and it's a respectable team. It's a top 16 Western team for sure, and they are not, because Borregos had their way. Seb, hot take.
My hot take is I think that all 3 Canadian teams are going to make playoffs.
What?
And it is not totally unfounded, okay? So the reason for it is because if you look at the previous contending teams for playoffs from last season and this season, so when it comes to the quals for this season, IRSC has been bodied by both Laval and Valleyfield in the East, as well as Penn State also getting bodied by both. And I think that bodied, I should say bodied, it was best of 5s, but it was an incredibly close. And IRSC is competing around the top, as we've seen. Alberta is the biggest question mark, right? Because, we don't know their level. They destroyed their qualifier in the same pool that Mizzou Gold was in for the first time, and they destroyed all of the opponents that Mizzou Gold lost to, which was like OC Falcons and things like that. I think because of how tumultuous the West is, I think Alberta have a pretty good chance if they can keep it together. The East is obviously the harder question, but I think, Laval is the main thing is practice. Practice. We know this from last season. Valleyfield, I think, are looking in peak form, and if they continue that form, they can make top 8. But I think if Laval practice, their potential is higher than Valleyfield's. And I'm convinced that this is probably the best season that we've had for all 3 of the Canadian teams to make it to playoffs. Yep.
West
what are you
Coast,
gonna do?
East Coast, man, you're saying somebody that is a shoo-in is going to die. Like, that is basically what it is. It's like somebody's gonna have to get upset by Valleyfield or Laval in order for them to miss. Because, like, just going down the list, Fisher is a shoo-in. Indian River State is a shoo-in. Both the Northwoods are shoo-in. Penn State.
Hold on.
Again,
Is IRSC shoo-in?
when are you going to recognize that this team literally has
got
not
their
dropped the
ass
ball
beaten
once?
quals, bro, by both of them.
Brother Main.
They
We
got
have
beat by
literally
Penn
had this
State
conversation
quals.
6 times over since
Right.
8 months ago. And since then, the team has gotten better. They have gone from, I told you guys they would be good during the beginning of the season. None of y'all listened to me. I told you they'd be good in playoffs. None of y'all listened to me. They actually get to playoffs. They are good. And you're still here saying that they're not good enough.
Maybe they should have been better in
championship?
quals, which is more current.
It's quals.
It was more recent. It's
It's
quals.
qualifiers.
And all of them are in the CRL now. So, I mean, those are just the same opponents. And if you can't beat those opponents, then what makes you think you're going to get top 8?
What makes you think that if Laval can't get past Valleyfield, they're going to be able to make top 8?
Because Valleyfield is probably making top 8 already. And if they already beat IRSC, then they don't need to worry about anything.
One of the 2 of them I can see. Both of them making it and upsetting any of the people that I just named on that list. Hell, I didn't even get to either the Akrons. And you're still saying that they're beating those.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like,
But
that's
no, I think
not
I
the
think
most outlandish
IRSC
take, but that's crazy. That's crazy, dog. That's crazy.
It's a hot take, bro. What do you want from me?
Taco.
That's hot. I'll give you that.
Taco,
I'll give you that.
give us
Respect.
the steaming crunch wrap supreme of the spring season.
I mean, the more I think about it, it's not because I was going to use this as a teaser and then I changed my mind in the moment when I gave my top 3. But I said about Arlington that I think this being their last season and last real shot is a huge motivator. And I think that thing really comes down to the fact that it will propel them, as Samba's so incredibly competitive. And yeah, he memes a lot about how bad the West is and how bad he is, but Samba's insane. Adverse for a while has been, up until I would say Cam came around, probably the best player in the entirety of the West individually. And then even Nava has gotten to the point where he's completely upped his game where he would be a starter on pretty much any other team, I feel like. So I think that was great. And then as I thought that, I realized that they are a cohesive unit. They're a good team. And I came to the East. My analogous team to that was Stockton, because I'm thinking Bussy is in his final semester as well, and that he's wrapping it up. He's not going to be able to continue. And I'm looking at these teams, and Stockton, I don't think, is in that top 8. I don't think Stockton clears 9th. I think legitimately I'm looking at these teams, and Stockton dropped one game in their quals, I will say. I watched George Mason play. They were solid. They had no chance against Stockton. It was child's play, it felt like, for Bussy and Top Cheese. And Anthony Pizza, Tony Pizza, my boy, favorite username that came in. So good. He is a great addition. I still look at them and I'm like, I don't know if they take down White. I don't know if they take down IRSC. I don't know if they take down North of Blue. And I'm thinking to myself, if West Virginia doesn't step up, then who knows? Laval might. And if they don't step up, then maybe Ball State will. And I'm looking at Stockton. I'm like, I don't know what team is going to come up. They cleared quals last year, and then they just had one of the most yikes seasons I've seen out of them just because they couldn't pull together. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I might get DMs about this later, but I think there's just too much drama. And I don't think you can push that aside because you have to put in the work now. Stockton is no longer a lock. Like they're very good.
They're now
very
on like
good.
a headline story of what are they going to do? How are they going to play?
So if they can find scrim time and put aside the egos and everything, awesome. But if they don't, I genuinely feel like we're at a point where Stockton, one of the most storied schools in all of CRL, with only really one, I think, semester of a blip where they didn't really pop off, was pretty much been always a staple. I mean, second place in the world. And now it's just, I don't even think they can reach that. There's just too much behind the scenes drama.
I mean, we'll see.
I think I agree
Game one
actually.
is Stockton IRSC on the B stream, so that will tell us. That will tell us what they're
Oh boy,
if
dude.
that'll tell us for both of them too, because if IRSC drops the ball there, everybody going to be coming after IRSC. If Stockton drops
coming
the ball
after
there,
you, bro.
everybody's coming after after Stockton. I mean, I don't know, man. That's a matchup. That's also, I really do think it comes down to how good is Tony Pizza? How good is he actually? If he's legitimately like because I've said his name to a lot of bubble players, and every single one of them has the same amount of respect for him, where they're just like, nah, you ain't never heard of him, but I promise you he is as good as they are like saying. If he's as good as they say, Stockton's a shoe-in, and honestly, I see them taking down Akron Blue and kicking them out of playoffs, if anybody.
Ooh.
But I don't know, man. That's rough. Stockton.
I don't want to put them out because I have too much respect for Akron Blue right now.
Honestly, sheer experience from Buzz and Tristan make me never doubt them at least getting to playoffs.
I don't
Beyond that, who knows? But I can't believe that they would choke or get nervous.
I don't doubt them. I think my big concern is just that it's like, when's the last time we saw Akron, like the blue team, get better? They haven't. They've just kind of continually just gone further down, and it's like it's a slow putter. They're not like steep send, but it's like very slowly kind of just dropping off. And it's like, at what point do we look at this team and go, oh, it's over?
Yeah.
Like
this very well might be the season. Very well might be the season.
I think this is a matter of perspective. Is it Akron getting worse or everyone else getting better?
Yeah.
True. The UNT effect, basically, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Daddy too
They're
fast.
still kicking though.
I'm ready. Y'all ready for some spice?
I'm ready.
This is twofold. There's a guarantee. Northwood White, going into the last week, is still going to be fighting for a playoff spot. That is the guarantee.
Whoa.
Okay,
bud.
All right, that's the first of two. What's the second?
I think that they miss playoffs.
Oh, there it is.
Oh my goodness.
There it is.
Naxus has just awoken. He's heard a noise in the distance. Like, I have to go to Twitter right now.
I'm literally getting unfollowed. Here we go. But they
out there. Noxus just
week
woke
five.
up, looked at his fiance, and just went, "There's a disturbance in the
Week 5 for Northwood White, Valleyfield, Indian River, and then Western Michigan. I'm going to go out on an even further limb. If they don't win that Western Michigan game, they are guaranteed not to make it.
There's no way they lose to Western Michigan. There's no way.
I don't know. I don't know. Western Michigan, I can see having a little bit of potential there. You got to remember.
I agree they have potential.
Gengar's him.
But like, over Northwood White was legitimately
Gengar over Nitrous though.
That's what I'm saying. Like for 60% of the last semester, Northwood White was legitimately the best team in CRL.
Yeah,
like they were. Like that's.
I'm spitting hot fire right now.
I listen. I kind of agree. I think that we got a bunch of washed. I think honestly, we have a bunch of washed old men that need to make way for some new generation kids here, and I think Northwood White is going to be the victim of that.
Wow. And here I thought the
Seb, you're making my
Field
casting
top
career
3
feel a lot
was
better.
Gonna be the most viewed clip off this stream, but here we are.
Okay. Well, scathing hot fire. Do you have a little bit of milk for us, Zeta?
It's definitely not that spicy. I'll tell you that. Yeah, geez, I was gonna say I have a bit of a two-piecer. I was gonna agree with the Stockton. I think my heart tells me that they currently aren't making playoffs, just due to the unknowns. And Anthony ate pizza. You know, is it gonna be hot or cold pizza? Like
Pizza tap.
You don't know. And then I think this may not be as hot, but I think LBSU is going to be a West playoff team, and I think they're going to at least finish in the top 6.
Dude, give me Helmsy in the playoffs, please.
Yes, playoff Helmsy.
They are just when they have Vol, or however you pronounce his name, Vastek. They are really good. And without them, they are just another West team. But I think they could surprise a lot of people. I don't think a lot of them have played against them with Vastek, or at least in a long while, because he wasn't on the team in the fall or anything they did on the fall. So, you know, my belief is behind them in being my wild card that surprises people and makes it into the playoffs at the very least.
It's already on tape. It's already going to be going up, but Akron Blue could very easily fall into the same hot take I just gave for Northwood White, because they also have a Western Michigan.
Damn, bro, you're just hating on me.
I think
as well as Northwood Blue
get in that take.
The lads.
Yeah, either one of those teams, but I feel like one of those teams, part of the old guard, finds itself in a sticky situation at the end of the season.
I think that's kind of what we're all leaning towards here, is that this is going to be the first semester where we're looking at this and going, it's all the new guys. Like the new guys are the ones that are going to reign supreme. I think that, like, I will say, to sort of like give a, like, you know, less spicy, a mild version of what Kendo was saying, one of the like expected teams will not make playoffs. One of like the shoe-ins, quote unquote, will probably not be making it, because they're going to drop the ball somewhere early in the season, or it's going to get later in the season and they're going to get complacent and lose to some teams that they shouldn't. Someone's going to get upset by that. I don't know if it's Stockton. I think Stockton actually might be the most likely of like that old guard to fall. But I could also see someone like, I could see even Kennesaw State like dropping as well. That's another roster I could see, like very solid on paper, really good performances, but just not quite enough.
I think that if UTA have another season like they did last semester, it got close, man.
Yeah.
It got very close. And I want to believe that the boys can really kind of wrap it together and be like, yo, like, you know, we are determined to like make it through. But if they have another kind of situation like that, the West might just overcome it. And I want to believe that's not going to happen. I'm just saying that there's a chance.
They did only have a 3-game differential at going 9-6, so that tells you, yeah.
Be fair, Missouri S&T was tied for basically getting eliminated from playoffs and then mop the floor with the West Coast. So you never really know. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's very on any given day, but I like to, I mean, Kendo, you brought up Western Michigan. If Northwood White doesn't take that, that's going to be brutal. But I think that's just like the epitome of so much CRL at this point, with being competitive in the top 8, is that your seeding is going to be massively changed just by when you don't get the gimme games. When you play the GCU, like last season, they're 3-12. They're not going to win a lot of games, but when you drop a game or something, or you start going to game 5 against them, those types of things, getting a +1 instead of a +3 out of a series, I think those are the things that are going to make a difference. I think East is a bloodbath. I think West tends to be pretty close, but I think the parity is lesser, as Bass has been so upset by me once again putting East first that he left.
Lost
Okay.
I think my internet just pooped for a second. I don't really know.
just for a second. Yeah, I do think it's just going to come down to like, if the top teams don't take games off of the teams they should beat, in quotes, those are the things that are going to knock them out.
Well, there has not been a team with 0 wins in league play since spring 2020. So, yeah, you gotta win your games. If you
well, I guess all we have to do is sit back and figure out who on earth could Alberta potentially beat. It's going to be crazy. Like, win. Who could they beat?
I can't wait for Alberta to just.
So no, I think their last match of the night, day one. So
who they playing?
Let me check. They are playing Texas Tech.
Oh, that actually will be
a team
who
match. Bounces up and down.
It's gonna be a banger.
That'll tell you if
two teams that could not take a win all season. That's crazy.
Yeah, we got Stockton, Indiana. So if you want to know the schedule, we got Stockton, Indiana, Ball State, Western Michigan. We get to see what Western Michigan's made of. Akron v. Akron day one on the B stream. Which will be great. And then we got Borregos, first time they're in. Borregos, Ottawa, so we get to see them against a playoff championship team.
Disgusting.
And then Texas Tech to Alberta to close it out. That's that's stream 1 for the B stream this Wednesday. So
you gotta let Taco and I run back the Akron matchup, because we did that on qualifiers. And my God.
I need to figure out who is on what. Guarantee there's gonna be a lot of people jockeying for changes at the last second. But I love it. I love it. That's part of the job.
Really, really excited for Wednesday.
Yep. We are very excited for Wednesday, and we're very excited that everybody was able to show up in the chat, show off, enjoy the first of what I hope is many of the Champ 3 podcasts, a CCA, CRL, Collegiate Rocket League based podcast. And I want to say thank you to all of my guests here today. We have Oliver Bass, the Bass from the past. We have Seb Dot. Got to check him out on the Twitter side. The Danger Taco as well. And Zeta, I really appreciate you coming in last second. You brought us a lot of stats and information that we really might not have had otherwise. So I appreciate the back end knowledge that you brought to this first one. Folks, if you liked what you saw, feel free to leave a follow or leave a like. But again, we're going to be available on the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, if I remember correctly, and we'll be trying to get that up as soon as we possibly can. Join us next week. I get the feeling there's going to be a fun topic involving maybe a Mexican representation in CRL. Look forward to it. You've been watching the Champ 3 podcast. Wow, I can't even remember the name I came up with. It's just that chalked, folks. We'll
Champ 3 gameplay.
Champ 3
gameplay.
Champ 3 gameplay. Champ 3 podcast. Champ 3 outro.
Still top 1%.
Special thank you to everybody who followed, by the way. On the back end of this, we had Shink, we had E-Rich, we had Vijal. Y'all are amazing.
What is that from Jack?
Wait, what?
We have a recent.
I think it froze. He
did it. It froze.
Jack literally crashed his computer coming in.
Yeah, that OBS virtual cam can't handle that level of graphical fidelity on that cat jam.
Wait, we're off as far as the recording goes. We are still on the stream, and thank you to everybody who was hanging out. Gaugan, whoops you, Shink coming in. We had Herc earlier. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Orc.
Atomic, J Turbo, thank you all for being a part of this first one, and we're looking forward to many more. And hopefully, we'll make sure we solidify a time for next week when it does happen. So, catch you all on the flip side stream.